Well, you write, and I quote, "The nuttiness extends to the state's Human Rights Commission. This must be the worst Human Rights Commission in the whole country, apart from all the others," end quote. Graham, I don't remember the Human Rights Commission making much of a peep during the COVID years. It seems the Human Rights Commission thinks of human rights as secondary to, say, government policy.
It reminds me of the fact that the Soviet Union had one of the best bills of rights in the world. But if the organs of society and government decide not to enforce what they've got in the first place, then you can have the best legislative apparatus and you can have the worst outcomes. In this case, you've got a Human Rights Commission that sees itself as being a proxy for the government, and you don't have state-of-the-art human rights legislation. You've got something that is getting progressively worse. So when there's macro assaults on our civil liberties, they're nowhere to be seen. When there's microaggressions that border on the nano-aggression, they're in there wanting to legislate politeness. They're in there wanting to weaponise the grievance mongers. There's a whole lot of provisions in this Act that will make it commercially viable to go after people who have wrongthink. And this is a commission that I'm sure will be very handily the handmaid to those commercial interests.
Well, I don't know about you, but I don't recall the Human Rights Commission having a chat to the Queensland government after we heard phrases such as "Queensland hospitals are just for Queenslanders." Do you remember any complaints there?
Oh, well, no, that's okay, because that's not an actionable thing, being a New South Welshman. So I can discriminate against you as much as I like, Alexandra, on the basis of the state you come from. But the fact that you might be short, that might get me into trouble. The fact that you might have a birthmark somewhere, that might get me into trouble. Now, I'm not suggesting anything here, but if you're a sex worker, I can't discriminate against you. If you've been sent to jail, I can't discriminate against you. Now, that might make for an interesting situation. Say I went to jail for fraud and I've got an accounting degree and I apply for a job with an accountancy firm. Are they actually able to say, well, I'm sorry, Graham, your accountancy qualifications are great, but we don't like the stickiness of your fingers, so sorry. So they've greatly expanded the range of things that can be discriminatory, but not that far as to involve the intolerableness of New South Welshness being a factor, or, God forbid, Victorianness.
Yeah, it's such an interesting state of affairs we have here in Australia, where you can discriminate against a perfectly good citizen who's done nothing wrong based upon their medical status, but you can't discriminate against a criminal applying to work for your business. Seems a little strange to me. But in your piece, you mentioned that this virtuous Human Rights Commission has made 142 recommendations to change the Anti-Discrimination Act. And the outcome, you say, will be the empowering of fringe activist groups. How do they manage this? Well, the more you expand the number of reasons for going to the Commission, the more opportunity you give basically people who've got nothing better to do with their time than to be upset about what someone else says. I mean, in the first place, being upset, being aggrieved, shouldn't be a reason for being able to try and enforce politeness or right speech on someone else. It just shouldn't be. I should be able to say anything about you that I want to, short of defamation, destroying your character to such an extent that it has an impact on your living or your livelihood or your relationships with other people. But I should be able to be pretty forthright and frank, and you oughtn't to be able to say to me, look, I'm upset by that, and you have to come to conciliation. So in the first place, these sorts of anti-discrimination laws, I think, are wrong. But what they're doing now is they're expanding the number of categories that might give rise to discrimination. And that's effectively suggesting to people that here are other things that you might like to be upset about. I'm a rational economist in my approach to life. And if you give people an opportunity, and there's a benefit to them, sooner or later, some people are going to take it. And it's it's going to expand, and that's what they're doing.